Welcome to the Business Trendsetter Podcast, where we talk about trends and how to use them to grow your business. My name is Manny Turan.
And I'm Adam Hartone.
We are Spark Partners. We're here every week to discuss all things business, all things trends. We talk about the big guys, the little guys. We talk about all sorts of things as it relates to growing your business. And we study lots of larger companies because they're in the public eye. But we also privately do work with private companies as well that have ownership that is not public. And one of these companies that we've talked about in the past quite a bit is Tesla. Now, when you're at the top of the mountain and you're doing well and you're selling out all your cars, you're obviously going to be a favorite of a lot of people, but you're also going to have a lot of detractors. We try to look at everything through a lens of growth, business trends, making the right decision. And even when you make the wrong decision, we're critical and help to give our thoughts on how they maybe can pull through. And of course, this week is the discussion is Tesla. You know, Adam, you and I talked briefly earlier about their rise and how much we were and still are to some degree fans of the company, but how they're no longer playing alone in this space. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about Tesla.
Yeah, sure. So back in 2009, when I started writing for Forbes magazine, I wrote some columns about how predicting that Tesla was going to be a big success, and it got so much attention because the people that bought ads for General Motors and Ford got angry at Forbes for the column and said, you know, they didn't like me writing that kind of a column, so they wrote their own columns in which they said that Tesla was going to fail. And they said Tesla would fail because it wasn't run by a car guy. The company didn't understand the National Transportation Safety Board and requirements, and that, you know, they not only managed to make a two-seater car that had a 70-mile range, they would never be able to meet all the federal requirements, scale up production, come up with a car that people really wanted, come up with a car that would have range. They said all these things were just never going to happen, and therefore Tesla would fail, and the whole electric car idea was a bad idea. I disavowed that. I argued against that. And one of the things I pointed out consistently in my column was that Tesla sold 100% of every car it made. And as it made the Model S, then, you know, that was much more successful, got labeled the best car in America by the number one rating company for automobiles. And then the answer they had was, well, hey, it's $80,000. That's a very expensive car. Of course, it's like 2010, 2011. That's a very, very expensive car. And because it's such an expensive car, it's a very, very small market, like Mercedes-Benz, and that they'll never go. Well, of course, the Model S became a very, very successful car. So you're right. For the longest time, I've been a big advocate of Tesla, and as a car company, as well as the Solar City and the other things they've done. And even recently, within the last year, they did a price cut on their new cars. And I said that was a good move because they were going to be able to increase volume, can maintain market share, and lowering the price would bring more people into the marketplace. And this would be a good move. So I've been very pro all of that. Well, I think at this point, I have totally changed my mind. And I would definitely not advise anyone to be buying Tesla stock. They did an earnings announcement this week, and they came out and everything was bad in the earnings announcement, but the stock price went up so like 12%, just because people thought that Musk realized, you know, what he needed to do to turn the company around. I would not pay attention to that short-term blip. Okay, the reality is, and I think a lot of people have forgotten this, but Tesla's stock actually peaked in October 31st of 21. So that was, you know, a long time ago, right? Yeah. And it peaked at $407 a share. Now, when I say peaked, I would have to go all the way back before, whichever one was, like 2012 or 2013, somewhere in there. Tesla's stock split 20 for 1. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking prices today, these are the prices after the 20 for 1 stock split. I've not gone back. I'm not referring to what prices were like prior to that. Okay. But I believe the all-time high was $407. It's traded this week at $140. That's a 64% reduction from its high. The most recent year, it's traded as high as $281, which is twice what it was trading for this week at $140. So the stock is down substantially. And the question is, well, okay, is it really low? It's time to buy. And let me tell you, I don't think so. And I don't think so because of sales. I want to give you just a quick indication here. Revenue for Q1 reduced year over year by 9%. 9% reduction in revenues.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, reduction when sales go down, it's a bad indicator. Musk is saying that Q2 is going to be a lot better. We'll see,
Yeah.
right? If you get 2 consecutive quarters, you go into a growth stall, and we know that there's a 93% chance you'll never make it back to where you once were. And so now he's halfway into a growth stall. Is it going to, what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen? And it's a pretty serious one. I mean, a 10% reduction year over year. So there's a seasonality. Q1 is always less than Q4 because people buy more cars at the end of the year with Christmas and holidays and things than they buy in Q1. But it's still, I mean, it's terrible. I'm trying to pull up the numbers here. The actual numbers of the sale of cars in Q4. Okay, Q4 was 484,500. In Q1, it was 386,800. So from down 100,000 cars. So 20% reduction in sales. Let me take a competitor of theirs, which is BYD. We'll get into.
Yeah, I was going to talk about BYD that overtook them as the largest car company in the world back last year, actually, last quarter.
Well, they did 626,000 cars in Q1, EVs, 626,000 EVs. So the reality is that profits are down. But we don't talk about profits because the profits are not a good indicator of the success of a company. It's sales. And what we see in Tesla is a situation where the sales just keep doing bad, right? And he not only doesn't sell the entire capacity that he has, he's closing down capacity.
Right.
He's announced that he's going to do a 10% layoff globally across the board. So give you a sense of kind of how badly this has gone for them. In 2023, Tesla dropped the price of the Model Y and S and X and 3, all of those, by $20,000. They cut prices $20,000 in 2023. The idea there being that they would make it up on volume and maintain their market share. Well, that didn't work. They cut price and it didn't work. This year, they've cut prices another $2,000 on the YX and Model S and $1,000 on the RWD and Y long range. So they keep cutting prices, but it's not working. They're not getting the volume out of it. It's not moving the marketplace the way it wants. And then there's a second interesting thing that happened. Because they cut the price of new cars so much, it caused the floor to fall out on the price of used cars. So the price of a used EV just dropped like between 30 and 32%. So if you got a Tesla, if you bought a Tesla, now new ones cost less than what you paid. And you can't trade your vehicle in to get anywhere near what you anticipated to get for it. Yeah.
Well, one thing that Elon was saying in the release, and we've talked about this to some degree, but he was making it very loud and clear, was the fact that, quote unquote, Tesla is not a car company, but it is a platform company, much like Uber and things of that nature, where it's not just delivering a vehicle. You don't just have a vehicle. It's going to be a whole platform that you can create autonomous taxis, which they're going to announce, I guess, in the summer, exactly what that looks like. And I'm just not sure it's going to be enough to get them to where they need to be.
Well, and I would agree because they haven't demonstrated that. The Solar City, which again, I thought was a good move. He bought back Solar City. They do rooftop shingles, right? And then they got him into the Tesla Powerwall battery business. So there's things, that's an adjunct that would be a platform, right, to hook up with Tesla. And then you've got Tesla chargers, and the Tesla charger system is growing. But none of those are really big enough. They're not large enough business to make a difference in the sales of the company. I like the idea that nationwide we're going to be using the Tesla charging system, and I think that's going to be a good move for Tesla. But is it going to be big enough to make up for a reduction in automobile sales? And he hasn't demonstrated he could take Solar City big. He doesn't. We're not hearing. You don't see ads for Solar City. You don't see him running around the country. In fact, it's an unprofitable business without a lot of sales growth. That's the problem I have with it. I would be happier if it was profitable with the low sales growth, or I'd be happier if it was unprofitable with big sales growth. And I like to say, hey, they got 40% of the solar shingle business or something like that, or the grid business or the home battery business. But the reality is that BYD is bigger in home batteries globally than Tesla is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, back to some of the dynamics of the marketplace, Tesla doesn't even make all its own batteries. BYD makes not only all of its own batteries, it sells batteries to other car companies in Germany and the United States,
Right.
including Tesla. Tesla buys some of its batteries from BYD. So BYD is way ahead in terms of manufacturing and R&D in the battery business. So Tesla's getting caught back.
Right.
Now take, for example, what happened again with the Cybertruck. Remember? So the
Yeah.
Cybertruck was announced in 2019. No, this is a good move because when you go look at the number of best-selling vehicles, the top 5 are like all pickups. It's the Ford F-150 and the Dodge Ram and the Chevrolet Silverado. These are the number. These don't sell super high volume vehicles.
Yeah.
And so you kind of like, if you really want to, being in the car business is more like being in the pickup business anymore. If you really want to make some money at it.
Yeah.
So the launch of the Cybertruck made a lot of sense. Hey, go out and get something in that marketplace that could be successful. He announced it in 2019, and he said, I looked this back up again, that it would come out into the market in 2020 or 2021. Well, we still don't really have it in the market yet. That it would cost $39,900, 40K, and it would have a range of 500 miles. Well, there are a few of them I see now. I've seen a few, especially in California. And I say few, I mean talking not even one a day. I'm talking one every few weeks. I'll see one of these Cybertrucks around. They're priced at 80 to 100K, 80K to 100K, right? And the people that are buying them now are buying what they call the foundation product. They're paying an extra 20K on top of that. And they said that they won't have a base model available until at least 2025. That'll be the earliest to get what they're calling the base model, which they're projecting now will cost $61,000 and have a range of only 250 miles because it's so big and it's so heavy and various other problems.
And not to mention the tremendous number of issues. I don't know if you're familiar with the hail damage issue, the accelerator issue. They had a big recall on that. There's rust. And then I do a lot of overlanding. I've got a Dodge Ram that I have a camper on, and I go in the backwoods and stuff. And I follow all these forums. And there's a couple, more than a couple. There's probably a dozen videos I've seen of these Cybertrucks getting stuck in very easy kind of things to deal with. I mean, like in mud, nothing crazy mud, just like regular mud, or in the snow when there's other passenger vehicles just passing it by. So I think it's kind of a bit of an albatross to some degree.
Well, it's an unusual looking vehicle, that's for sure. Modernistic, born to the future, back to the future kind of a thing. I haven't decided if that's good or bad. What I do know is it's real heavy, really, really heavy. And weight can be a benefit if you manage it properly. Like take, for example, a farm tractor. But on the other hand, if you kind of make a vehicle that goes 90 miles an hour and you've been managing that weight and you throw it into a situation like that with snow, a lot of times you just got too much torque.
Right. And of course the batteries are really heavy. If you want to have that kind of range, it doesn't make sense.
I told you I've driven a number of these cars now, including the Tesla Model S and the Model Y, and the Model Y Plaid has 1,000 horsepower. I tell you, it's scary fast. It's too fast for a man like me to drive. I'd have to dial it back. I mean, seriously, it was so fast. But then you say, well, but you put that in a truck, it doesn't make a lot of sense because it's 0 to 60 is one thing in a car, but it's a whole other thing in a truck, especially if you're trying to pull a trailer or you got a heavy load, and like I said, you got a camper or something. Now all of a sudden that torque's bad. It's going to cause you to spin your wheels out. What's going to happen, as we all know. So we've got all kinds of design problems, but the net of it is that he had made an announcement in 2019. He's going to have something in 2 years. He gave us a price and he gave us a range. And now 5 years later, it's still out on the market and he's way off. And that should be concerning to anybody because one of the things that caused the stock to pop 10, 15% after its bad earnings announcement was that he said, we're going to go make a Model 2. And the Model 2 would use some of our existing factories. We'll have to build new factories. We're going to retrofit it into those. And this is going to be the car that we're going to sell for $25,000. We're going to get into the lower end of the market. I looked it up. The problem is that BYD is already selling cars in Brazil, Germany, China, Indonesia, other markets outside the United States, already selling cars for under $25,000. And they're profitable at it. Their stock trades on the Shanghai Exchange and on the Hong Kong Exchange, so they actually have reported data that you can get your hands on, even though it's a Chinese company. And they're making money selling that car at 25,000. So here we have, okay, how have you done in terms of designing the Cybertruck? It's an utter failure. You don't have anything for us right now. Maybe you'll get something in a few years. Now you're announcing you're going to come up with a new car, going to have it on the market in 2 years. It's going to be better and it's going to be cheaper, and you're going to be competitive against the guy who's already out there selling 400,000 a year of these things.
Yeah. I was
I don't.
having this is actually an interesting thing, and we should talk about this. I was having a discussion with somebody the other day, and I was describing to them the concept of blank space or white space, right? When you go out and you create a team and you do the 5 M's, you have a mission, metrics, management, money, and the moat, protecting it, all that. And they were like, okay, that sounds like a great idea, but what if it doesn't work? And I said, well, that's part of the design. If it doesn't work, then you haven't lost the whole thing. You haven't bored a hole through the side of the ship, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess in a way, the Cybertruck is not white space. I mean, that's full bore part of their operating business, right?
Yeah. I mean, what he did was he said, we're going to take all of our product development for cars and put it into this one car called the Cybertruck. And it hasn't worked. Now he's saying, well, okay, we're going to get that out the door. We'll finish that up somehow in the next 2 years and solve all these problems that you talked about, which I'm doubtful of because he's had so many problems. And now he said, but we'll turn ourselves towards making this Model 2, and we're going to chuck it out in 2 years or less than 2 years, and it's going to be wildly successful up against competition that's already there. And my point would be, you know what? All this keeps coming back to the company Tesla was a tremendous innovator. They developed the EV market when there was no EV market. They addressed concerns like range, how much range you could get. They addressed concerns like, could the quality of the car, how fast would it drive, all kinds of things. They made a good electric car, and it was very successful. They made more than one model of an electric car was very successful. And for a long time, they basically owned the market, right? They had it. Well, so the company that was in there innovating did well. But in the last few years, we don't see that innovation anymore.
No.
I think I told you that I went test driving a bunch of cars in February, and there was just no comparisons. The Tesla, if you got that 1,000 horsepower car, it was unbelievably fast. I mean, I can't describe how fast that car was. But at the same time, it wasn't nearly as nice as like the Mercedes-Benz or the BMW. And it was priced as much or more than the Mercedes-Benz and BMW. So you sit there and say, wait a minute, I could get a 580 horsepower BMW, a 500 horsepower Mercedes-Benz, both of which are faster than anything I've ever driven in terms of a gas car. They handled really well. They were pointed like you would expect a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW to be pointed. And it was a little bit less money than the Tesla, which had this design. You said that everything was kind of like a Chevrolet, and it had a nice screen and had a nice interface. It was kind of clunky on the interface, but the inside was like a Chevrolet. It was just not bad, but it wasn't that luxury feel.
Right.
Yet they were asking $90,000 to $120,000 for this vehicle, depending upon what option. The base model was $70,000, but at that price range, I could go buy a Genesis for $35,000. A Genesis all electric for $35,000. And when I drove the Genesis, I rented one for a week about 4 months ago. I got to tell you, great car. It wasn't a little car, nice car, big sedan, 4-door, and handled well. I was just really surprised at how well it performed as an EV for under $40,000.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where I'm saying I don't think that they've got the design edge anymore. I don't think they have the innovation edge they once had. And that's really bad because now if you think they're going to succeed by competing heads on in production by making more and more cars at lower prices, now you're going up against people who that's their stock in trade, right? People like BMW, Mercedes, on and on. In fact, I went in and I pulled up a list of competitors.
Okay.
These are people that have a car on the marketplace. There's a bunch of people that have announced cars that are going to be out in the next year or 2 or 5, whatever. These people have all got a car on the marketplace.
Okay.
Well,
this is global or U.S.?
This is all in the U.S.
Okay.
BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Volkswagen, Lexus, Chevrolet, and Cadillac, Ford, Subaru, Kia, and Genesis. So those are all, you can go buy a car from any of those people today. That's an all electric vehicle. And on the other side of the equation, we have the new competitors that have come out. That some of these are pretty limited edition. That's Neo, Li Auto, Xpeng, and Fisker. They're pretty limited. But there's ones we've heard about, Polestar. At one point, Hertz committed to buying 60,000 Polestar cars. I think they're pulling back on that now. I don't know if they're going to implement. Fisker has been around. Iconic, which is the Hyundai brand, is, I see a fair number of those on the road. And of course, Lucid and Rivian are the other ones we see. Rivian, of course, with a big EV, they're number one in EV trucks, with the Ford F-150 Lightning second, I think, in that marketplace. But that's a long list of
That's a
competitors.
long list. Yes, you're right.
And
a couple of years ago, that had like 3 on the list,
yeah,
right? And 2 years before that, there was 1.
yeah.
So there's no doubt, as you said, that Tesla was an innovator, but just like anything else, you need to continue to innovate. And innovation is giving the customers what they want in new and better ways.
Example. So Tesla, they sell all their vehicles directly. I went to the Tesla location, can't call it a dealership because it was a Tesla owned location. I walk around. I'm looking at cars, and I'm finally like, how do I buy one of these things? And I find out, there's some people here that sell them. They didn't really have any motivation. I was kind of startled. I thought, okay, you should be asking me what kind of car I want, all this kind of thing. And they really just didn't seem to have any energy about it, And I started asking them, I said, well, what about the rebates that apply? What kind of rebates can I get from the federal government? All this stuff I've heard about in the news.
Yeah.
How would I apply it to buying my car? And they couldn't answer the question. I was startled.
Really?
They were just very ineffective salespeople. Now, on the other hand, I'm going to go back again to the BMW. When I went to talk to the BMW dealer, they're mostly selling gas-powered cars. They are trying to make a conversion. I think the dealerships might have some struggles here. But what I can say was that the salesperson got the general manager involved, and he said, listen, you've heard about the problem with the used cars. And I said, yeah, I have heard about the problem with used cars. And he said, and you've heard about all the technological advancements that have gone on. I said, yeah. He says, listen, we've put together a program where you can lease this car on a 3-year lease. And he said, effectively, what happens is, let me give you the number. And he turns out, if I wrote him a check for $30,000 that day, we would get this very high-end BMW iX for 3 years. And then we have to turn it back in. Now, the first time I said, well, Adam, you're paying $10,000 a year to own a car. And I started saying, well, go buy a $100,000 car, figure out how much depreciation you're going to get hit with on that. And it's more than 10,000 a year. It's more than 30 grand. Let's start with that one. The second part, though, is I'm not thinking about how many computers I bought, and I have to buy a new computer every couple of years, even if I don't want to, just to keep up, just so you and I can be in our business so we can be successful. And I think about the thousands of dollars I spent. If I had had a program where I could have gone in and got a computer and said, hey, can I just rent this thing for 2 years? And can I rent it, give you 30% of the price for 2 years and give it back to you? I would have saved thousands of dollars.
Right.
And that's effectively where we're going with this. They're saying, look, with all the risk there is in the marketplace, don't buy an electric car, lease an electric car. And then what happens is 3 years, you'll get all the new technology, all the new battery technology and everything else, so you can start over again. Yeah. And I realized that was really a very smart way to approach this situation. I would never have thought of that on my own. It took BMW working with financial people and then putting it out in their dealerships to promote the car. So now back again to competition. When you're going in and you're talking to the Genesis of the people, the other competitors, they're out there trying to sell cars. Mercedes-Benz put on a show in California. They invited me to come, and I got to test drive on a track a Mercedes-Benz equivalent of an S550 electric car. And no charge. Just come on in, drive it. No, they said, hey, you own a Mercedes-Benz S550, you can come do this. They're out there talking to me, trying to get me incentive to buy the vehicle, working with me. And I'm telling you, at the retail level, that's not what I'm seeing happen with Tesla. They're not doing that.
Well, because at some level, they have a certain air about them, right? There's a certain mystique that they didn't really, I mean, that'll get you only so far, right? The early adopters are going to jump on that train. But I actually was in California like a month ago, and I jumped into an Uber. The guy was driving, had a Model Y, and I wasn't impressed. And I started asking him the questions about, well, how do you feel about this car? And he says that he owned a previous Tesla, but this new one, he wasn't very happy with it. He said it rides well and it looks great, but the quality, the workmanship has gone down, and he's pushing on the side panels inside the car, and you can kind of hear them crunch a little bit. And I wasn't that excited about it I mean, I wrote
Exactly the experience that I had. Exactly the experience I had. And so again, coming back to you start saying, I was very excited about this company when it had its innovation edge. It has not kept that innovation edge. I don't know why. I don't know where what caused them to start to steer in a more traditional direction. But in that more traditional direction, they've not succeeded. They didn't get the Cybertruck out. They're really late to market with a low price car under 25 grand. They're trying to call it the Model 2, going up intense competition with people that are have much greater expertise in manufacturing and in battery technology than they do. I'm just sitting here saying, I don't see where the future is for this company that's going to come out with a great new car. They haven't, that was where they were
Mhm.
a decade, 15 years ago. But today, the marketplace has changed. It's more competitive, and they're not there in terms of being more
No.
competitive in manufacturing, having breakthroughs in dealerships, having breakthroughs in pricing, having the ability to stay more competitive with the cars themselves. And the answer to that, then he says, is going to be the robo taxi. And I got to be like, oh my gosh, wake me up. Come on.
Right.
Waymo is in so much trouble with their cars that the robo taxis they've tried to put in California, they dragged a woman 20 feet. They've shut down in the middle of intersections and caused fire trucks to get in trouble where the fire truck couldn't get to fires. They have had so much trouble. Even the people who live in California in the urban areas have taken to at times setting fire to a Waymo car when it's on the side of the road, just because they're so pissed off about how poorly these robo cars actually
Yeah.
operate. And Musk thinks all of a sudden he's going to break through that, and he's going to have this robo taxi that's going to outperform everyone else. You know, again, I sit back and say, okay, you're going to. How much are you involved in that project? Because it looks to me like you spend most of your time on Twitter, now called X. And I don't know if I want you involved in it, but who's your design team that's got this breakthrough? What is your breakthrough that's going to make it
Yeah.
possible that you're going to have such a better robo taxi than anybody else, including people who've been at it for 8 years and they're still struggling to solve the problem?
Right. Well,
Again,
time will
I'm not.
tell.
I don't have faith that the guy that Musk's leadership or the company itself has the right people, the right resources to make the breakthrough
Yeah.
happen in the robo taxi.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the mystique and excitement of working at Tesla has gone away. The luster. I have several friends that used to work there. That it's not a nice place to work. It's not. It really isn't, from what I understand. Right? I mean, this is going off of at least
No, there's been a lot of
pre-experience.
reports. There've been
Yeah.
a lot of reports. Yeah, people have complained a lot. They've had employees file lawsuits against them. They've had employees die on the job. Yeah, they've had some serious struggles with the employment at Tesla. There's no doubt about that. And again, I do workshops around the country, and I frequently have asked people. I'll ask them, how would you advise a company? I'll try to get some discussion going, and I'll ask, why would you advise Tesla in terms of what it would do? And one of the things I've seen happen over time is a few years ago, people really were excited about Tesla. Now, recently, people are unexcited about Tesla. And they often have a very, very bad attitude about Elon Musk. And the last 30 workshops that I've done, universally, all 30 workshops, the majority of the people, 90% of the people, thought that Tesla was not worth trying to advise, that Musk would not pay any attention to any advisors, that a leadership team wouldn't pay attention to an advisor, and that it would be a waste of time for them to try to advise them. Now, this is just random people. I mean, I'm getting hired to do a workshop. I'm coming in, I don't know these people. And yet I've definitely seen that tide swing in that direction.
Well, this is a good podcast for our listeners and viewers out there. We follow current trends. We talk about what's happening in the industry, and it's not just the quote unquote current trends. It's these long-standing mega trends that we discuss on a weekly basis. So stay tuned for additional conversations. And with that, Adam, have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. I just want to conclude with one thing that I started with. I want to end it with it, and that is, it was the revenues that got me concerned. And when I saw that Tesla's revenues were going down and the revenues of BYD and the competition are going up, that was when I started to see a real problem. Pay attention to your revenues. Revenues are the biggest forecasting tool you have for whether or not you're going to succeed in the future.
Very well said, Adam. Revenues are king. Cheers.
Thank you.